Om Sadashiva Samarambam Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam Ishvaro Guratmeti Mochi Veda Vibhagine Vyomabda Vyapta Dehaya Dakshinamurtaye Namaha Sava Vedanta Siddhanta Gocharam Tamagocharam Govindam Paramanandam Satiguru Pranatoshimaham Om Om Shanti 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 Om Namaste. Welcome to our Tripura Satsang. We on the chapter 17, page 173. We begin today on verse 49, just a small recap. Nirvikalpa Samadhi clearly will never eradicate ignorance. Page 173, verse 49. Nirvikalpa Samadhi, after he had said that Nirvikalpa Samadhi was going to bring about self-realization, moksha, and then he contradicts himself to further explain that you do not need Nirvikalpa Samadhi, you need Savikalpa Samadhi. And in this verse, he does present that contradiction. Nirvikalpa Samadhi clearly will never eradicate ignorance. Therefore, in order to destroy ignorance, we need Savikalpa Samadhi. We need to seek Nirvikalpa Samadhi. So it remains a mystery. I think that like Shimaya used to do, according to James, he used to present the experiential, mystical Vedanta to people in order to attract them. Because people need to relate to something experiential, otherwise it's not attractive. I have had many instances that I thought maybe people could see a certain appeal in these teachings of Tripura or Samadhi, but no, if there is no promise of a certain wonderful transcendental experience, people are inclined to believe that it's just a philosophy, you know. And then he kept exalting Nirvikalpa Samadhi, and then now he says otherwise. But he's not done with it. He's going to keep coming and present both Nirvikalpa, oh yes, and then no, you don't need to be in that state. The following verse, he explains a little bit. Now he explains some other things. So I just want to begin from that. All of the things in creation, to be born of a sentient being requires a good luck. And then he talks about human life being the best of luck. And then he said that some people have spiritual punya, and then they have a burning desire for heavenly, after death, you know, heavenly experience, celestial lokas and things like that, you know. And then he goes to say that the remaining few, after people have desired things of this world and things from the subtle world, and then there is a few left over, which are the Vedantins, but not all of them have proper, prepared, qualified intellect. This is due to the power of Maya. And therefore, they cannot comprehend the non-dual nature of the I, of the self. They remain held in the grip of Maya. People blinded by Maya cannot see the truth. Even when some people rise so high in the scale as to understand the rationale of the Upanishads, even when they come to that heights of valuing and understanding it, but there is something missing which prevents them from being fully convinced and enjoy the fruits of self-recognition. This knowledge to fructify as mental resolution, it must be followed by the destruction of desires and fears. Because all desires and fears are based on what? They flourish on the belief that reality is duality, flourish on the denial of the non-dual nature of the I. It's saying that. So if we know that everything is consciousness and I am consciousness and I am Purna, so what's going to happen with our desires if we really believe in that teaching? You understand? On that statement, Vedanta statement. If we really believe, we take it, we claim it, we embrace it, and we take it in, digest it, and we accept it. And then one desires for completion, or desires for completion by avoiding or rejecting certain things, they fade away gradually but surely. Only those incrustable are the ways of Maya, which veils the highest realization from common people, even from some Vedantic people. It is as if they threw away the real gem in their hands, think it is just a stone. Only those with devotion to the truth is going to get over, transcend this avidya, this power of Maya. But you need to be a devotee of the truth. They will, in due time, discern, discriminate, and be happy. Being by the grace of God endowed with proper discernment and right earnestness, they get established in their understanding of one's non-dual nature, and that knowledge remains all the time there. So one's non-dual nature and become absorbed. This absorption is a doubtless understanding, conviction. Understand? I shall now tell you the scheme of liberation. One learns through devotion to God. One learns the teachings, the Upanishads, the Vedanta after merits, and usually goes over several births. And when they worship Tripura for a long time with intense longing and devotion, and then one matures, this passion for pleasures of life arises in such a devotee. So who gradually begins to long for knowledge of the truth and becomes absorbed in the search for it. You see the absorption here again, it's absorption in Nididhyasana, the burning desire to understand. Once this passion was dealt with, or ragas and dveshans were dealt with so that the passion develops, arises. And then gradually this desire for what? Desire for knowledge grows in the mind of the seeker, because in the past, before that, James usually says we need to convert, generally speaking, in the spiritual world out there, the conversion of desire for an experience to a desire for knowledge. So if you really after self-knowledge, gradually, you're going to develop punya over several births and whatnot, and then one will be absorbed in the search for knowledge, no longer for experience. She then finds a gracious guru and learns from guru all about this state, transcendental state, okay? Dangerous words here and there. So learns about what? About self-knowledge, self-inquiry, self-knowledge, the nature of the self. So learn the scriptural teachings that reveal one's nature as the self alone. So why to put these transcendental states? Okay, so it's going to sound much more attractive, you understand? But it's not to the point. Of course, as I again and again say, the mind of the yoni is highly benefited by self-knowledge. And then the yoni experience a certain state, which is much less mental disturbance. And when the mental disturbance comes, it's easier to deal with it. So he and she finds the guru and learns from him about the scriptural knowledge that reveals the non-dual nature of the I, of the self. She has now gained the theoretical knowledge. So now you got the knowledge. It is intellectual, theoretical, academic knowledge. And this knowledge is the first step. It needs to be learned. And all doubts must be removed, dissolved, resolved. This is the first step. And then the king says, this stage is Shravana. You study the scriptures with the help of a guru friend or a guru teacher. And then you learn, resolve, you transcend, you learn the teachings until you have no longer doubts. No, you learned, because Shravana, you see that in Shravana there are still doubts. So he got all the knowledge. So I often say that there is no real line, or the line between Shravana and Manana is so fine, because once you hear the teachings, you hear the teachings, and the teaching was not completely accepted, or it's still subject to doubt and suspiciousness, because there are doubts, there is some vagueness, some unclear things, or all the notions that are still obstructing the acceptance of these final statements. So we listen to the teachings, and then we say, I listened to everything. But if you are highly qualified, that's enough. But otherwise, we need to go and do our meditation, our Vedantic meditation. In this case, is what? Manana. Manana is part of a Vedantic meditation. We say that Vedantic meditation finally is Nididhyasana, is constant application of the knowledge, which is already clear and not subject to doubt. But even Manana, which is contemplation on the teachings, is a sort of a meditation. We hear first, and then we do Manana. Why we do Manana? Because we want to see if there are still some doubts, what is still preventing me to fully accept this knowledge. After this, he or she is impelled to revolve the whole teaching, the whole thing in his mind, in their own space of meditation, profound manana, until the mind is satisfied. And this is a practical sadhana that does not involve the Guruji. Our Shravana, yes, manana does not, unless the Guruji, the disciple, presents a question, further questions, wanting further clarification. But he heard everything already, So that's why at the beginning, it's not good people to be asking much question. You hear everything, And then those most persistent questions and doubts and suspiciousness and vagueness, and then you subject to the teacher. He's impelled to revolve over the matter until he's fully satisfied with what he's got in his Shravana. And then from his own practical knowledge with the harmony of the scripture injunctions and the teachings he received from his Guruji, he is able to ascertain the highest truths with with conviction, certitude, clear and solid and hard and fast knowledge. This is called manana. Okay, so here he did not include the questions that are submitted to the Guruji, because in the tradition there is almost no room for Q&As. So it's very rare to find Swami Paramarthananda's sessions on Q&As, because if you go through the entire Shravana, your manana, you will clear the doubts, okay? Because you just need to do the work. We need to do the work. Nobody can do this work for us until we fully accept the teachings. On the practical level, I'm going to harmonize the teachings with my life. And then, only then, I'm able to ascertain the highest truth, which is Aham Brahmasmi, or I am free, limitless, non-dual consciousness. And now it's clear to me. This is manana. There are certain knowledge of the oneness, the non-dual nature of the self, must afterwards be brought into practice. Now we are talking about nididhyasana. So you heard everything, you contemplated, now you are fully convinced. And yet you need to do a little bit more work, because ignorance is hardwired and very stubborn and persistent. And then you have to remember the teachings. Vedantic practice is nothing but remembering the teachings over and over again until you don't really to remember it, okay? He says that there are certain knowledge of the non-dual nature set must be afterwards brought into practice, even forcibly, if necessary, until one experiences the truth naturally. The experience of the truth occurs to him. In other words, you have to conform your life with your self-knowledge afterwards, and our human nature is going to still pop up with some hardwire, old residual, emotional, mental reactions here and there that comes to surface from time to time. And then one is invited to recompose and go back to the teachings, review the situation and apply the teaching. This is nididhyasana. And there are certain situations that provokes a more residual of ignorance surface, and a lot of the time is in between human relationship, especially couples, and so on. So all of that is part of the process. It's our human nature that surfaces from time to time. After experiencing the true self, the inner self, the non-dual self, understanding that the self is the same in all beings, he or she will be able to identify the self as the Supreme Brahman. And this identification, steadily held, is going to destroy the residual ignorance. It destroys the root of ignorance gradually. There are some small roots that take some time. But there is no doubt in regards to that. There is no doubt in regards to the benefit of self-knowledge. And as we often say, I often say, at least, there is no such a thing as 100% perfection or 100% sainthood. You cannot be a human being and be a divine being without having some humanity, which is part of your complex, the program of your complex body-mind complex, you understand? Operating. So purification, purification, purification. And again, we go back again and again to Ramana. This book was added, I don't know, 50 years ago in the Ramana ashram, and some notes here, they mention Ramana and so on. So Ramana is a symbol of a soul, an incarnate soul, highly purified. But still, there are rumors and gossips that sometimes he would be upset with certain things in the ashram. Human nature. After experiencing the inner self, gradually the root of ignorance is going to be destroyed. There is no doubt. The inner self is realized in advanced contemplation, and that state of realization is called the Nirvikalpa Samadhi. Again, he goes back to Nirvikalpa Samadhi. He wants to create some confusion. It seems. Oh, he's trying to seduce the yoga people, to see people listen to them. Oh, no, you see, he's talking. The real thing is Nirvikalpa Samadhi. Let's go and listen to him. Sometimes we have to say something to please the other so that the other does not walk away. I have found myself sometimes doing that, but more often I say things that chase people away. This is one of my limitations as a teacher, Nirvikalpa Samadhi. Memory of that realization enables the person to identify the inner self with the universal self. I am that Brahman. I am that consciousness. This consciousness is that consciousness, is of the non-dual nature. And how I realize that. So if I had to go through Shravana, listening to the teachings of Guru, Manana, contemplate on the knowledge, and then Nididhyasana, applying the knowledge, now he comes back to say that you have to be in the state of Nirvikalpa Samadhi, to erase all ignorance, okay? And then he goes, that state of realization, in advanced contemplation, is Nirvikalpa Samadhi. So I think it would be better to say is in meditation, Savikalpa Samadhi, or Sahaja Samadhi, natural Samadhi. But you'll see, he's going to be going back and forth, maybe to the end of this book. And the memory of the realization enables one to identify the true inner non-dual self as the universal self, the only self there is. This is Pratyabhinya Yana. Contemplation is designed in its progressive states as Savikalpa Samadhi. So Savikalpa Samadhi, what is this Savikalpa Samadhi? Samadhi in respect to what? It's on the very, very late stage, progressive stage. Contemplate on these teachings is going to bring about Savikalpa Samadhi. This Savikalpa Samadhi is when the words of the scriptures are no longer necessary and one experience this beautiful reflection of consciousness in one's intellect. You are in bliss, basically. So there is an experience of the illuminating aspect of consciousness reflecting in one's subtle body, and without need of the teaching. So one is in that kind of state. That is Savikalpa Samadhi. But there is also Nirvikalpa Samadhi, which is unqualified Samadhi. reading this passage of this book again, I was thinking like, okay, so what is Savikalpa Samadhi after all? Because technically I heard many things many times, more or less. I understood the concept, but when you say qualified Samadhi, is Samadhi with a certain qualification, meaning to say there is some modification in consciousness. Consciousness is individualized by a certain modification. And my understanding is that Savikalpa Samadhi is just to be in a state in which there is only aham, a sense of existence, sense of presence, existence, but with no second thought besides aham. You remember Nisargadatta used to prescribe that kind of journey, you just go back to the aham and stay there. And then when you least expect, you go to the absolute, which would be Nirvikalpa Samadhi. And then there is no modification in consciousness, which is qualified and unqualified. In Savikalpa, there is a modification. The modification is aham. Aham is very blissful. And if you understand that aham is that consciousness, aham brahmasmi, there is no big deal. You don't need to go into the blackout of Nirvikalpa Samadhi, because this reflect consciousness is a free, limitless consciousness, and I am experiencing what can really be experienced in a wakeful state. Okay, and you want to have your mind awake because you want to further understand that, rather than depending on the memory, which is very subtle in the case of Nirvikalpa Samadhi. Oh, what was that? My intellect was not there, but somehow I sensed there was a wonderful thing, that blackout, Qualified Samadhi and Nirvikalpa Samadhi. Dhyana, which is meditation, is the initial stage when we have a mind attached to a lot of thoughts and objects. We want to calm down the mind, and then we do all kinds of dhyanas, sadhanas, to purify the mind. Dhyana leads to the repose consequent on the resolve that the mind in its absolute purity is only the self. So it begins to meditation and then goes into Savikalpa Samadhi, when the mind is really undisturbed because there is only aham. And then you can go into Nirvikalpa Samadhi, in which the mind is off. But our goal here is to purify the mind until the mind is experiencing Savikalpa Samadhi, a qualified Samadhi in which there is only aham. And then this aham has to be resolved into aham brahmasmi. But one can go and rest in a blackout here and there, if one, I wouldn't mind to have this experience of Nirvikalpa Samadhi. I never had, okay? I heard from the Gurujis that have been associated so far that is absolutely not necessary. And I trust it, and it is my experience that I should never trust something which is a state that come and go. A state that comes and goes is going to leave me, if it's very wonderful, with a vasana for more. And since I have no real control in keeping it permanently, moreover, we need to function in the world. What is the big deal about this Nirvikalpa Samadhi, But here he keeps bringing back this concept. There are, and then he says, in dhyana, the mind is becoming quieter and quiet, but there are still some thoughts, some interruptions, some yakatya, some concerns, preoccupations, and anticipation, and fears and desire. So there are interruptions by thoughts in the earlier stage of dhyana, and we all know that. In the beginning, I thought, this is an exercise on futility. It's impossible to meditate because, at the most I could have a small gap that my mind was peaceful. And then again, I would either fall asleep or thoughts would come back again and again. Falling asleep, Tamo Guna or Raja Guna, but to keep the mind contemplative, sattvic, was impossible because of too much Rajas and Tamas still needing to be dealt with, purified, converted into more Sattva Guna. When after much practice, the mind reposes and becomes uninterrupted for a certain appreciation time, it's called Savikalpa Samadhi. So certain technicalities. Is it correct? Technical aspects. If by its constant practice, the rest of the mind ensues without any previous resolve, meaning to say you no longer need to control the mind. The mind is effortlessly there, stable in aham. And if that continues uninterrupted without any effort, then it's called Nirvikalpa Samadhi. The inner self glows in its purity. And here, the author gives the impression that Nirvikalpa Samadhi is to stay with the mind on, not off, okay? Because you go from Savikalpa Samadhi, and then you continue practice, and then the mind rests without any need for effort, okay? Rests, and continues resting uninterrupted for some time. This is called Nirvikalpa Samadhi. The inner self glows in all its purity in this last stage. Again, he gives hints that this Nirvikalpa Samadhi involves the mind experience the inner glow of the self. After rising from it, the memory, and then here he gives another hint that you are not there because you are going to rely on your memory of that condition. So after rising from it, the memory of that uncommon experience remains. It enables the person to identify that the transcendence self, which was not really experienced because the mind was off, but this transcendent self is of non-dual nature, is the same in self in all. If the person has this knowledge, the person is going to identify that blackout with an experience of a self, which is the self in everything and everyone. And then he says, when you come back, your mind's functions are back, and then you remember that you were the self, and you had that certain experience in which there was not even a hum, and you recollect that, you remember that, and then you establish, yes, just like the scriptures say. So I am that consciousness, which is not an experiencing entity, but here I am as an experienced entity in Savikalpa Samadhi and Sahaja Samadhi, or in a very, very common state of mind as one fulfills one's duty. But anyhow, in meditation, and then you come out, and then he brings the Sahaja Samadhi rather than the Savikalpa. And as it is said by Sri Ramana, and then this commentary here is from one of the disciples of Ramana. On those days, they were reviewing and re-editing this book. So this Sahaja Samadhi is the oneness of the self. That is the oneness of the self, the same as the identification of the transcendence of the one with that same one. So I am that self. This self, Vijiva Atma, the Atma, I, Jiva, is the same as Brahman Atma. So you identify all the diversities of reflect consciousness as one and the same consciousness in Brahman. This destroys the root of ignorance instantly and completely. Okay, this can be challenged as well, because it's almost impossible to remove all small residuals of ignorance. Depends on what we would define as ignorance. So is ignorance here to fall back into the notion, aham body as me? No. If ignorance is to go back to identification, I am the body-mind complex, and then on that, ignorance was destroyed, okay? But some residual of ignorance may rise here and there, and that is part of the process of purification that it happens before and after self-recognition and hardened for firm self-knowledge. He says the destruction of the root of ignorance, aham body as me, was destroyed instantly and completely, and this is a fact, acceptable, because self-knowledge is a knowledge that cannot be reversed. So once you know it, you know it. It's like learning to ride a bicycle. In the beginning, it's difficult to find your balance, no? But once you learn that, you're never going to forget it. Even if you have 107 years and you're still in good shape, you're going to sit on a bike and you're going to find your balance. No? So is with self-knowledge. Therefore, dhyana has been said to develop into savikalpa and nirvikalpa samadhi, where modifications signify the many-sidedness of consciousness. All the modifications in consciousness, meaning to say thoughts, which includes aham, or aham in relation to any object of the world. So whereas modifications, these thoughts signify the many-sidedness of consciousness reflecting, as the world, the thoughts of the world. Nirvikalpa signifies its unitary nature. Okay, when the mind does not create pictures due to thoughts, so when the mind is so quiet, there are no pictures, there are no thoughts, and then there are no objects, subtle mental object and physical object, it is said to be in the unmodified state, yes, which is its primal and pure condition. Yeah. So this is the pure, unmodified or modified, but pure condition. When the mind does not create many pictures due to thoughts, it's said that it is in its pure condition. Okay, but mind is a mind only when it's experiential mind, okay? So the question here is the mind when it is not producing thoughts and pictures of objects, but it's just there as pure aham. It is said to be in its pure primal condition, aham, okay? So is aham a problem? I would say no. When the mind does not create pictures and it's in its unmodified state. Oh yeah, but if there is aham, it's a modification in consciousness. But we are talking about the mind. The mind needs aham. The mind without aham is not mind, it's consciousness, unmanifest as nirvikalpa samadhi. But when the mind produces thoughts in objects, okay, and then it is in the unmodified state. When the mind does not. When it creates picture and thought, it is modified. And when does not, it is in their it's resting in their pure condition. The pure condition of the mind, to my take, is aham, which is savikalpa samadhi when you are sitting in your meditation room, and it is sahaja samadhi when you are engaging the world, is still, in that kind of state, that aham. All there is the self, and the objects occur in me, or you don't even need to remember that. You have just a certain mood in dealing with the world from that angle of understanding. When the mind does not create pictures, that's what it is. When the pictures on the wall are all erased, the original wall remains. No other work is necessary to restore its original condition. So again, we go back to the teachings of the previous class, in which the mind was being broken down into the illuminating aspect and then deliberation and consideration aspect, engaging thoughts, objects, okay? But there is one side of the mind which is just a reflector. It's reflecting consciousness, and it reflects, to begin with, as aham. And then if focus on one object or another, and then it is going to engage that object, and consideration is going to fall deliberately. So, but when the mind is there, it's in the pure condition, and it's just shining. This is an expression that Swami Paramahansa used. I love it. Okay, we say we have the teachings that the mind reflects on the subtle body, but I like better this metaphor. The mind, it somehow pervades subtle bodies, and then it shines. It's just like electrical currency that, runs through a bulb, and then the bulb shines with light. So the mind shines, okay? So the mind shines. When the pictures are on the wall are erased, the original wall remains. So when the mind is just shining, but it's not revealing any sought object, so it means that the objects were removed in that state, but the original reflect light of consciousness remains. Likewise, the pictures on a wall can be erased, okay, but the wall can never be erased. So the light that reveals thoughts and objects remains, but objects may be removed. Certain states of mind are not going to produce thoughts and objects compulsively whenever not necessary. No? But our focus is not in the empty mind, but it's in the nature of the mind as the light of consciousness, which is reflected in my subtle body. And when the mind is like that, well, it is just shining as pure mind, pure aham. Similarly, the mind remains pure when thoughts are not present. Thoughts of what? Of the world, but you need aham. So if you want to enjoy the mind, you need to have at least aham. Otherwise, you are in the blackout, and then you have to recollect and try to understand what was that, why the power went off. No, it did not go off, but the mind was not shining anymore. When the picture on the wall is similarly, the mind remains pure when thoughts are eliminated. Therefore, the unqualified state is restored. If the disturbance, the disturbing thought is ended. Okay, so now again, it applies the question, is the aham a disturbing thought? No. Why? What disturbs the mind is aham and the world. When the other thoughts, which depends on aham is the wall, and then the objects are project. The moment that the objects immediately, if the person is not highly established in self-knowledge, there will be disturbance, which is attraction and repulsion for whatsoever appears revealed by this aham. Isn't it, Lynn? You agree? There is indeed nothing more to be done for the most holy condition to be maintained. So you don't need to do anything anymore after you have understood. Your mind has gone through a process of purification in which most of the disturbance are gone, were suspended to a certain extent for a certain period of time until you could understand that you are the light revealing all thoughts and objects. Some thoughts are going to disturb because you are still projecting reality to them until they are canceled in terms of value. thoughts and objects, and then the mind begins resting more and more undisturbed, so somehow. After you have come to that understand, there is nothing more to be done. For this condition, I would say, Sahaja Samadhi should be maintained. Nevertheless, even Pandits are deluded in this matter owing to the power of Maya. But even people who understood the whole theory, the reason of this body of knowledge, is fascinated by thoughts, objects, experiential energies and realms and whatnot, and attributing reality to them, and then remain disturbed by one's likes and dislikes in respect to those modifications that occur. Modification occur if you have a like and dislike. It's impossible not to have disturbance. But Yanni has likes and dislikes, yes, but it was minimized to an extent that the Yanni experienced something more like a preference. And then when things are really adverse, Yanni has that kind of mental, emotional, psychological strength, like Swami Paramarthananda puts, to handle something that it was not within his preference, So after all, the Yanni is subject to some likes and dislikes that were converted into mere preference. If you guys need to say something, please feel free to interrupt me.
So, Arlindo, in Vidya Mukta, there's no aham, right?
Yes, and in Nivikalpa Samadhi, there is no aham.
No aham.
Yeah. And Vidya Mukta, there is no individual soul either. The Vidya Mukta, it does not mean anything because the individual soul, which is an entity regardless of having a physical body or not, it dissolves because there are no likes and dislikes. There is no enough energy of likes and dislikes to constitute and maintain an individual expression of limitless consciousness. You understand?
Mm-hmm.
It's like a wave in the ocean, So when the wave gets smart and understand, oh my God, I'm just the ocean, and I'm doing my best trying to reach the ocean here. And then there is no energy for the wave anymore to manifest. They acutely now the author is going to talk about the three kinds of aspirants: the acutely intelligent aspirants and the less and less ones. So the very, very less, the lowest, do not even come close to Vedanta, as we know. Aspirants may be divided in three groups: the best, the middle, and the lowest. Of these, the best class realized at the moment of hearing the truth. Very rare. Their ascertainment of truth and contemplation thereon are simultaneous with the words of the scriptures. When he hears from the Guru or from the scripture itself, immediately he has no doubt about that. Okay, he asserts that as the absolute truth, and how he knows, because I am that absolute truth. I don't need any validation. And it happens right away, very rare. Realization of truth requires no effort in this case. And then the king, Janaka, says, take my case for instance. On a moonlight summer, I was lying very drunk on a downy bed in my pleasure garden in the love embrace of my beloved. I suddenly heard the sweet nectar-like sound of invisible aerial beings who taught me the non-dual nature of the self, of which I was unaware until that moment. You see, he had an epiphany, he heard those teachings. And I instantly thought it over. So I started contemplating what I received in that sort of dream. And I was even with a hangover, I was drunk. But then I thought it over and I meditated upon, and I realized it in 1 hour, less than 1 hour after I heard the teachings. For about an hour and a half, I remained in Samadhi, the state of pure bliss. So he stayed in a very blissful state. After he heard that, he contemplated for 1 hour, and then he like, yes, yes, yes. And then that yes brought him into a blissful state, which should be, I would interpret as Savikalpa Samadhi, but most probably he's going to say Nirvikalpa Samadhi. I regained consciousness. If he regained consciousness and then he fell into Nirvikalpa Samadhi, he lost consciousness totally. I regained consciousness and began to muse over my experience. Wow, what a wonderful, what happened to me? Was the power really off for some time? How full of bliss I was when the Aham was not present and thoughts, Idam thoughts were not present either. It was amazing, extraordinary. Let me return to the Nirvikalpa Samadhi. The happiness of the king, of the gods, do not even come close to the happiness I felt in this Nirvikalpa Samadhi. Now, he's selling Nirvikalpa Samadhi here more than anywhere else in this book. Huh? Not even the creator, Brahman, could have had this bliss. All my life before was being wasted trying to get happiness from other pursuits. Just as a man ignores the fact that he holds consciousness, this celestial gem capable of fulfilling one's desire in his hands, and he goes begging for food and so on, wasting one's life trying to find resolution by gaining external pleasures. For me, such hankering is done with. Let me always abide in the eternal self, infinite source of bliss within me. Enough of such foolish activities. They are shades of darkness in vain, repetitions of useless labor. So I don't want to do anything anymore. I'm going to go to Tiruvannamalai, look for one vacant cave, one of those caves of Ramana, and I'm going to work for Samadhi. I'm tired of wasting my life. Now, so be they delicious dish, so any pleasure, sense pleasure. So I developed a passion to everything. Disgust for them had not arisen in me before, but now, because I had been foolish, treading the way of Maya, samsara. As soon as I had decided on and attempt to turn my mind inward, another bright idea struck me. So he was coming out of that blissful state of Nirvikalpa Samadhi. He was wondering what happened here. And then he said, no, out here, there is trouble. I'm going to go to that state. You know, it's better than deep sleep somehow. And then when he was making a resolve to go back to Samadhi, another bright idea struck him. What confusion I am in. Although I am always in the perfection of bliss, what is it that I want to do? What more I require? What am I lacking here? Why I have to go back to the Nirvikalpa Samadhi? He was questioning right there. When and hence can I get anything, even if there were anything new to be gained? Would it endure, or it would be something that come and go, like every and all experience? No? So it's not permanent. It's not going to endure that state. Therefore, it is not reality. No? I don't need to get anything because my reality is Ananda, Purna. How can I, who am infinite consciousness bliss, need to effort to go into a certain state? Makes no sense. Immediately his Viveka was up there challenging any hook that the ultimate is a fixation with a certain state, which by nature, like every state, will never endure. It's always subject to beginning, middle, and end. Individual bodies, their sense, minds, etc., are similar to visions in the dream. They project from me consciousness. Control of the mind leaves all other minds as they are. Even if I control my mind, all the other minds are there, following their nature. So what's the use of controlling my mind? Minds controlled or uncontrolled, they are just projections, appearance within my own self. My mental self, my mental eye, my third eye, everything is appearing within the scope of my consciousness, and I'm full. Why I need to go now try to control the mind to hold a certain state? You see, now he explained his own experience that again contradictions several passages in this book. Yeah? Again, even if all minds in the universe are controlled, mind remains free, not controlled. For my mind is like infinite space. Okay, let's say that all minds are going to be controlled. How so? By the means of yoga. By the means of yoga, effort to control the mind, all minds may be controlled. But my mind is not controlled. My mind is free. Why? Because my mind is like a space. You know, it takes everything in. Consciousness takes everything in. So he has identified his mind not as a state, but just as consciousness in which all states come and go, include the state of nirvikalpa samadhi that he was almost like attempting to begin searching or reproduce again. Well, my mind is like infinite space, the receptacle of all things. Who is to control the mind, and how and what for? How can samadhi be brought about when I am already in the perfection of the bliss of self-knowledge? For the self is bliss, consciousness, ananda, even more perfect than infinite space. Now, is this bliss state more perfect than the infinite space, the space in which this experience of bliss come and go? I am that perfection, the space, and there is a certain bliss in identify with the space in which all states appear, come and go, superimpose in the mind. My own light manifests diverse activities all about the world, which is again my own manifestation, all is me. What does it matter if one should manifest as action or inaction? Again, we are going back to the Gita, chapter 4, talking about action and inaction. The one who understood the action within inaction and inaction within action is a wise person. My own light manifests everything. What does it matter if one manifests action or inaction? Where is the gain or loss in manifesting or having any experience or manifesting activity or silence or any object of experience? There is nothing that can be added or subtract by my space as consciousness. So similarly, what does it matter for the perfect blissfulness of the Aham Brahmasmi if it falls into nirvikalpa samadhi? So I have the bliss of the self. It does not matter for this perfect knowledge, which is blissfulness, awareness of my blissful nature, if it falls in nirvikalpa samadhi or not. Samadhi or no samadhi, I have the same space or light of consciousness, perfect and eternally peaceful. Let the body do what it likes. Let the body follow its nature. Thinking thus, I always abide in my own self as the perfect fountainhead of bliss and pure, uninterrupted consciousness. I remain firm in this knowledge in respect to my true nature. I am therefore in the state of perfection and remain unblessed and not needing any specific samadhi, now, or we can say a nature kind of resolution of the mind. My experience is typical of the best aspirant. He was describing his experience. He heard it, boom, in 1 hour, and then an hour and a half of deep Nirvikalpa Samadhi, and then he contemplated that experience of the blackout, and then he wanted to go back, and then he did some more contemplation, and then he said, no, I don't need anything anymore. I do not need to pursue bliss in any kind of samadhi. I was one of the best aspirants. Wisdom is achieved in the course of many births for the lowest aspirants. There are a few verses. Can I finish the verse? My experience is typical of the best aspirant. Wisdom is achieved in the course of many births by the lowest aspirants. Me, so many lifetimes, try to improve and so on. And for the middle class of the aspirants, wisdom is gained in the same birth. It's saying that in the middle class, the wisdom is gained in the same birth. But for the middle class, how many lives he was the lowest aspirant, going from life after life, slowly and gradually, according to the aforesaid scheme of learning the truth, conviction in respect to the truth, contemplation, meditation, qualified samadhi, unqualified samadhi, finally sahaja samadhi. Finally, sahaja samadhi. Again, he's just throwing the notion of nirvikalpa samadhi as the ultimate. But he says in the third stage, meditation, qualified samadhi, and unqualified samadhi. And then he says that in meditation, you're going to go through savikalpa samadhi and nirvikalpa samadhi, which he still presents as part of the process, as if sahaja samadhi would really require qualified and unqualified samadhi. It's not really necessary, okay? You don't need to be a samadhi yogi going through years of experience of savikalpa and nirvikalpa to finally get to sahaja samadhi, to be unattached even while engaged in the activities of the world. So this last stage, sahaja samadhi, is very rarely found in the human experience. This is a very nice statement. To be in that state of mental resolution, equanimity, and never, experience any disturbance while engaging people, place, and circumstance, it's a very rare phenomenon. And then he goes, and again, he's going to hammer on nirvikalpa samadhi. Why to fall into nirvikalpa samadhi without gaining the fruit of its wisdom? So fools, are these yogis that got a nirvikalpa samadhi vasana, and again they fall into that. And I was told that, and I read in certain books, and Papaji used to tell that Ramana used to say that don't fall for nirvikalpa samadhi, just stay alert here in silence, doing the inquiry, who am I, who am I, who am I? Why to fall in nirvikalpa samadhi without gaining the fruit of its wisdom? Even if he should experience samadhi for 100 times, it will not liberate the individual. So nirvikalpa samadhi does not liberate the individual. Therefore, I tell you that all these samadhis, including this deep sleep samadhi and the samadhi between thoughts and during the days, as we have seen before, they are fruitless. You need the knowledge. He's pointing out that you need the knowledge. Unless a man lives the ordinary life and checks every incident as the projection of his or her own self, not swerving from the self in any circumstance, he cannot be said to be free from the handicap of ignorance. So one needs to work so profoundly to get into those rare states of mind, okay, which to a certain degree begins with self-recognition, self-knowledge. Do you agree, Lynn? Nirvikalpa Samadhi is characterized by the experience of the true self alone, namely pure chit, pure intelligence, pure knowledge, pure consciousness. Through eternal and resplendent, even ordinarily, this abstract intelligence is as if it did not exist. Abstract intelligence is the background on which the phenomena are displayed, and it must certainly manifest itself in all its purity in the absence of the phenomenal world. Although its appearance may look like new at first, so the cognition of the consciousness is so unfamiliar that it may be missed. It remains unrecognized by everybody because it's not distinguished from the modifications of consciousness that appears in the background of this abstract intelligence, abstract consciousnness. It remains mostly unrecognized. On their being eliminated, it becomes apparent. It remains because it's not distinguished from the phenomenon displayed on it. So it's basically everything is consciousness. If you remove the namarupas, the phenomenon, and resolving them in consciousness, in this abstract intelligence, and then the abstract intelligence, once understood, becomes apparent. This in short is the method of self-realization. Oh, Brahmin, think over what you have learned here so far, and you will realize in due time. With the wisdom born of your realization, and you will inherit as the self, and eternally you will be free. Beautiful. Dattatreya said to Parasurama, did you like the story, Parasurama? Parasurama said, yes. And then he says, so, okay, I gave you these instructions, just like Janaka gave to Ashtavakra. And Ashtavakra reached his own place and put these lessons in Nididhyasana practice. And soon he became a Jnani on his own, a Jivan Mukta, liberated while alive. So you should do, Parasurama. Okie dokie, we finished this verse. The next verse, the next chapter is continuation. Dattatreya had to do some more work on Rama. Okie dokie. Anything from you guys? No, no complaints, no questions, no doubts. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Namaste. Thank you, my good friends. We meet again. What's the day today? Thursday, yeah? Yeah. Coming Monday. Ishwara willing. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Arlindo. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Arlindo. Another brilliant satsang.
Thank you, Ma. Much appreciated.
Okay.